Welcome to today's Software Security Gurus webcast with Brad Senetza. Welcome, Brad.
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
Of course. Hey, Brad, do you mind sharing a few words about yourself?
So I work at Oracle. Global Product Security is our group. It's under Marianne Davidson, who's the Chief Security Officer. And we're responsible for kind of what the name says, product security at Oracle.
That can mean a lot of things. And actually, today I would like to dive a little bit deeper into two subjects around product security and Oracle, if you don't mind. I hope they are near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, sure.
So the first topic I would like to tackle is around distributed culture. I read a blog where you say, hey, you know what, in Oracle, the way we create systems, develop systems, we have some sort of a small centralized group, and then we rely on a decentralized number of security enthusiasts, you call them. Maybe let's start with the beginning. What is the central group like? What does it do? Like, how big is that group?
Yeah, so centralized groups it's kind of like an evolution of what we've seen. Usually it was like a security person, and then they would assign like a couple of security champions. And then what happened was the security champions, they get, I don't know, inundated with a bunch of stuff, right?
Yep.
So then they started going to centralized security teams. And the centralized security teams are in different groups. So not at one giant centralized security team, but more like at the line of business level. So one product will have a centralized security team, like our cloud centralized security team, and we'll have a SaaS centralized security team, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And then what we saw was, they would have issues, right? Because the security champion couldn't handle all the stuff. So naturally it goes to these security teams and they try to grow themselves. So you end up with these, giant security teams, and they can't handle it either. So what we found works best is when you take a small specialized security team and you use a distributed, and I call them security enthusiasts because, there's like a million names. I don't know.
Okay.
Everybody has a different name for them, and because we have a bunch of groups, right?
Yeah.
We have tens of thousands of developers and tens of thousands of consultants, and so they're all divided into their own business units under different VPs and stuff like that. So they have all different names. So I call them enthusiasts, but enthusiast is kind of an interesting term because a lot of times we'll see that groups try to assign a security person. So, if you at one time we had this requirement that you have to have a security person on your stuff, right?
That's good.
And then they would pick like the guy out of college. Okay, you're the security guy, right?
Yep.
And he's like, okay, what do I do? And he's like, doesn't matter. But we found that now sometimes you have to do that, right, to make sure that you have coverage. But we found as time goes by, if you get the guy or the girl or the person that wants to do security, that it's way more effective.
Absolutely.
Right? They're more interested and they come up with great ideas and there's feedback and all that kind of stuff. So the distributed centralized team is usually smallish, and they're experts. So experts in a sense that they have more security experience than say other people, right? You get typically in a development organization like Oracle, you get a ton of developers, but you don't get a ton of security people. And oddly enough, developers don't want to be security people.
Well, so no, and that's quite interesting, right? So I was actually going to ask, how do you find these security enthusiasts? Because in this huge company, Oracle, how can you identify the people that have an interest? Because normally developers, yes, I get what you're saying. Not all of them are interested in security. How can you find these couple of people that really wants to take this thing on, that drive this thing forward? In I call them a satellite in the groups that are not central.
Yeah, so we try to do things like meetups and stuff like that.
Okay.
To drive an interest in security. We've had meetups for like consulting groups. We have a DevSecOps meetup, and we invite anybody that wants to learn. And you get really quite a diverse group of people there. And then we have different speakers with different topics. It's kind of cool. And then the groups kind of, I don't know, they sort of evolve on their own. So there's this guy I know, and he's in PR, and he's really excited about security stuff. And originally you'd think why would you want a PR person as a security enthusiast? But if you think of the kind of influence that they would have with the people that they deal with, that's kind of a cool thing, right? Because they deal with guys that, would talk to researchers, that would give interviews on TV. And if the PR person thinks that security is important, then I think we're doing a good job with, security culture in that.
Absolutely. Respect. So if you do these meetups, somewhere I read that, is it correct that you have like 2,700 people in a particular group? I think it's the consulting group, the distributed consulting group is 2,700 people. How do you do a meetup? How do you get alignment?
Those, like I said, the consulting is, tens of thousands of groups, right, or people.
Yeah.
And so what we did was we created, like specialized training for our security enthusiasts, which includes, threat modeling. That's kind of cool. Basic code stuff, stuff like don't hard code passwords. So it goes from don't hard code passwords to, security principles, threat modeling, that kind of stuff. So it's very broad based. And then we give them badges or whatever. And then that encourages them to take the training. We don't make the training mandatory, they take it. And then that's how we measure the number of people that, and then we don't have, so the meetup that we have, Global Product Security, we're a very small group, we host meetups. And typically we get, I don't know, anywhere from, well, they usually start small, but around 200 people. But that's not 2,700.
That's a good sized group, 200 people.
And then what happens is that we encourage the smaller security. So you get a lot of those security experts coming to those meetups. And then we encourage those guys, those groups to have their own meetups. And so it's very important. And we invite everybody that wants to show, but we don't get 2,700 people. They don't show up to our meetup.
Actually, I want to go. So my second topic was something that you already touched on, which is feedback loops. And essentially, you're saying, hey, you know what? We're doing training around threat modeling, and I know that in DevOps we try to automate as much as possible, but there's stuff that we cannot automate, like hey, doing threat modeling, training people is something that is hard to optimize. Doing code reviews, it's all very hard to automate, nearly impossible. So how do you scale that? How do you optimize something like that in a huge organization?
Yeah, so we push a thing we call iterative secure design. Okay. And so that's because agile and the backlogs and all that kind of stuff. If you don't have security built in and you don't have the culture, then you're not going to add it to your backlog. And then so what we do is we created kind of like, I don't know if you call it a checklist. It's a set of guidelines and principles you want to think of, like trust boundaries. Are there any trust boundaries being crossed here? And eventually, and it's actually worked pretty well because we found places where, in their design, they go, oh, by the way, maybe we shouldn't be storing this sensitive information in these fields, right? And that's kind of it's kind of a cool thing that you would originally, we've had issues where people have done coding and they get all to the end. And that's when they find, oh, we have sensitive information here. Well, if you find that at the very end, it takes weeks to go back and do the redesign. So if you can find it as part of your iterative secure design backloggy kind of thing, then that reduces the rework. And that's really one of the most expensive things. Yep. And if you look at, we had this centralized security team, right? And they kind of said, well, we only want to, there's so many groups doing coding that they said, we only want to look at the important security issues. Yep. Well, what's an important security issue? Is it something that has, crypto in it? Or is it something that, where we cross trust boundaries. So that's why we want the distributed guys to look, and if they find something that looks, hey, this could be an important thing, then they can escalate it and get the guys, the security experts, to help them review the stuff. Because you can't do 500 code reviews a week. That's not possible. Well, maybe it is possible. I mean, it's not going to be great, I don't think.
So one thing you just mentioned is also like what is obvious for certain people is not obvious for other people, like people starting in the field. Well, and even sometimes senior people, like if they haven't come across something similar, well, what is obvious for one person is quite often non-trivial for another person.
Yeah, that is one. Yeah, that's kind of the thing that we notice, right? Because as security people, you develop a certain, I don't know what it is, certain spider sense for things, right? But other developers, they're great coders, but they don't necessarily can spot an obvious security issue when obvious to us, not obvious to them. So we help teams run vulnerability assessments, right? And then at the end, we run say, some tool, and then we go, okay, what do you think? And they go, looks good. They don't know if it looks good or bad, right? It looks, and then you go, well, what about this and this? And then, oh, okay. So then you have to sort of train people that are new what to look for.
Yep.
As an experienced person, if you don't have the training, it's not going to help, right? So that's why we have those feedback loops. We have continuous training, and then they tell us with the feedback loop, it goes the other way, right? We had a group that was, a bunch of security guys, great guys. They were like awesome dudes, and they can code and do all sorts of stuff. So they automated the heck out of everything. They're like, oh, look at all this amazing stuff we have automated. Our DevOps is bang on. It's the best ever. And then so I talked to the QA group. I said, how's the security testing? They're doing all the stuff, and they go, yeah, they test like stuff that doesn't matter and stuff that doesn't work. And if you create your security testing in a vacuum, it's going to be awesome, right? But if it doesn't provide value to the development teams, then it's kind of a waste, right? So that's what that feedback loop helps with. And same with the, we rolled it out. We did this distributed thing to consulting. And one of the things that we sort of didn't really take into account was the sales folks. Okay. So we never really made security training a requirement for salespeople back in the day. And then what would happen was the consultants, they were all, oh yeah, security. And the sales guys, they wasn't on their radar. It's not that they didn't care, it wasn't on their radar. And so they would sign these contracts, and then it'd get to the consultants. They go, what about all the security stuff? They go, what security stuff? So, there was a gap there, feedback loop. Hey, the security guys the sales guys aren't putting security stuff into the contracts. So we changed the model of our training, and we added the sales folks, and it's really been beneficial. Sales guys are, yeah, security. They've actually been able to sell security services. Oracle being concerned about security is now a plus, because other vendors are not so inclined to do the security kind of stuff that we are.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed is that security only works if the entire organization, first of all, carries it. Like everybody needs to be involved. Everybody has to stand behind it and say, yes, we take this serious and we want to do this. And another point is absolutely one thing that you mentioned is it's a continuous process. It's not a one-time thing that you can do right now and everything is secure and you don't have to care about it anymore. So I really like our iterative process on, like, for example, threat modeling or training. And especially around threat modeling, I got some questions lately around like, hey, how do you actually do that in the new world with rapid development and DevOps and all of that? So would love to hear your, like, frequency wise, like how often do you look at applications? Is that monthly, yearly? It's still, a lot of people are still struggling with that. how you really do threat modeling in the new world.
I want you looking at it on every one of your sprint reviews, right? That's what I really want. You know, we've seen in the past where they do, you know, architecture reviews and all this stuff. They come up with the diagrams and they build all the threat vectors and all that stuff, but the product's already out the door.
Yep.
It's gone through 25 iterations by the time they do this gigantic architect review. Sure, they might find a few things, but the product's not the same anymore.
Correct.
If we do threat modeling while we're doing development, we can find that, hey, we're going to put sensitive information in these fields that really we shouldn't. Oh, by the way, you know, we don't really want everybody being able to log into the admin console. So maybe we should fix that now before we get to the end of the product, that kind of thing. So yeah, so the iterative design stuff, it's not, the threat modeling it's not really, you know, it's not a formal kind of thing. It's more of when you do design, these are the things you want to worry about. Are you going to import third-party stuff, right? Is that third-party stuff actually going to be supported? Once you get your application built, how are you going to patch it? I mean, that sounds really weird, but I talked to a team recently and I said, okay, you know, you need to change these values. And they go, oh, we don't have a way to patch it.
Yeah, but scale is different as well for you and the organization. It's, you know, it's not something that will be used by 5 people somewhere, you know. It's quite often at massive scale that people are using these products. So if you design and if you build something, you need to think about that.
I mean, even so the biggest products that are mature, like the database and stuff like that, you know, they don't have a lot of changes. I mean, when they go to the cloud, they make a bunch of changes to that. But it's, you know, there's still a bunch of development. There's still a bunch of new innovation, things like that. And the consulting groups, when they get into you know, when they go to a customer for their contract, they, you know, that's always new kind of stuff, right? A development organization, they'll be there for years, right? So they can afford to put in these mature processes and everything. But, you know, if you're a consultant and you have to get in there and deliver a product in a year or 6 months, you don't want to come out the end and have an insecure product and be in the news, right? So you have to make sure from the get-go that what you're doing is secure. And that's kind of what we're trying to instill with the security culture. And I think, you know, I think we're doing a good job. I mean, the PR person is a great example. The sales guys, I talked to a team and they had like a PM. They're like, why do we want program managers as security guys, right? Who wants that? But then in the end, the PM came up with all these great ideas on how to improve the product because they knew more about the product, the way the customers used it, than the development staff did. So you know, it's kind of beneficial. So if you can look at, you know, that's why I say security enthusiasts is instead of appointing somebody, okay, you're the guy. Sure, you're like a super smart security dude, right? But that's your lane. If you get people outside your lane, you might get more ideas, and it might actually help improve the product.
Absolutely. So I really like that. Like the more people, diversity is also an important one in there. Like essentially, the more diverse people you get into, the more ideas, the different angles you get in there. So it shows that truly Oracle cares about security, and it's from the ground up, but also top down. Everybody cares about security. So maybe one final question, Brad. I'm looking on Google, and Google is not helping me out. You're flying under the radar, my friend. Luckily, some of your friends quite often post about you. So if I've done my research correct, you like wine a lot. And one of the blogs was about the California Cabernet. So is there anything that you can recommend wine-wise? Like, what do you like? What can you recommend?
See, your research isn't that great. I I've gotten out of wine probably years ago.
Yeah, it was 2008. I'm saying you're flying under the radar.
Yeah, I don't want to be on the radar, right?
Okay.
That's why I was saying to you I was going to do that 2-finger thing for the whole video.
So then I'm going to ask another question. If you're no longer in wine, I see all these guitars. What is your favorite band?
My favorite band.
Yeah.
Oh, Slipknot. Have you heard of that?
Oh, nice. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I love that stuff.
Yeah, it's a real shame that we can't go to concerts anymore. That's one of the things I like doing is going to.
I've seen Slipknot in Ghent when it was like less than 100 people. They were not famous before they even became famous. Love that group. Love that group.
Yeah. Always fun concerts.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Brad, thanks for accepting to be the 18th software security guru and coming on the webcast. Thank you very, very much for this fine chat.
Thank you. It was fun.